anybody who's ever chased one of these dolls, the American Girl doll, or the chubby ones that were big when my
Cabbage
daughters.
Patch Kids.
Yes, thank you, Cabbage Patch Kids. When my kids were little, know what an important Christmas event that is. But what needs to be explained to them is that China has been eating our lunch. If you ever go back and look after World War II, they've slowly but surely stolen all of our steel industry.
If you're saying, Ben, but that's just one guy. Come on, they're not all saying this. They're all saying this.
Did a MAGA surrogate really suggest that working class girls should just have fewer, more expensive dolls instead of affordable toys? Spoiler alert, yes. And the CNN panel's reaction says it all. I've compiled the most unhinged moments where GOP representatives completely lost it on live TV while trying to defend Trump's increasingly bizarre positions. From reopening Alcatraz to celebrating economic pain, these clips expose exactly what happens when blind loyalty meets live television. Stick around to see which Republicans suggested Americans should be grateful for higher prices.
When Donald Trump says jump off a bridge, the MAGA Republicans in the House and Senate and other surrogates say, yes, sir, sir, yes, sir, after Donald Trump watches the Alcatraz, Escape from Alcatraz movie in Mar-a-Lago. Then you see all of the MAGA Republicans, they go on TV and they parrot this stuff. What these MAGA Republican talking points were like here's MAGA Republican Congress member David Joyce saying that girls should have fewer dolls.
Hey, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. We know you want to. Go ahead, we'll wait. Alright, appreciate it. Now back to the video. Ever notice how when rich people try to solve poor people's problems, they come up with the weirdest solutions? It's like a billionaire suggesting homeless people should just buy houses. Well, we got another gem recently when a MAGA surrogate on CNN suggested the most out-of-touch solution to inflation I've heard in a while. This genius actually told working class families they should buy fewer, more expensive dolls for their kids instead of many cheap ones. Not kidding. The CNN panel's reaction was absolutely priceless.
MAGA Republican Congresswoman Mary Miller. Here she is on one of these right-wing propaganda media networks attacking John Deere.
How are the tariffs working in your estimation to bring manufacturing jobs to America?
Well, I think it's great. President Trump's, with the tariffs and the incentives that he's offered, I don't know what to say. John Deere better get their business back to the country or they can plan on losing their business. There are other places to buy equipment companies going to Mexico. We don't appreciate them promoting a woke agenda, and we are behind the president.
They literally laughed in his face. It was that special kind of awkward TV moment where you can see the host thinking, is this dude for real? One panelist jumped in to point out the obvious. Most toys in America are made in China anyway, so the whole buy American dolls argument was dead on arrival. It's like suggesting people should avoid foreign cars while sitting in a Toyota dealership. The math just doesn't add up. But instead of backing down when faced with basic facts, the surrogate doubled down harder than Trump on a golf course. He actually suggested poor families should aspire to rich people's toy buying habits. Because nothing says I understand economic hardship like telling struggling parents they should spend more money on fewer toys. What's next? Telling food stamp recipients they should buy less food, but make sure it's all organic?
Here she is saying, you should feel pain, Americans. If you're not feeling pain from the tariffs, then are you even really a patriot? Are you a patriot?
Even people that are feeling a little pain from the tariffs are completely supportive of what President Trump is doing. They know that President Trump understands how to use the leverage. So they're 100% behind him. And they understand it takes time. The left are liars, and the legacy media, they lie.
This wasn't just some random rich person brain malfunction. The whole doll discussion tied directly to Trump's tariff policies that would make toys more expensive for everyone. Let me break down the numbers for you. Average American families spend about $300 per year on toys. With Trump's proposed tariffs, that jumps to nearly $400. That's $100 that could have gone to groceries, gas, or maybe even saving for college. The surrogate tried to spin this price hike as quality over quantity, like forcing families to spend more on toys is actually doing them a favor.
All right, you know what this is kind of making me think a lot about is the fact that every rich person I know their daughter has 2 or 3 dolls, maybe a couple American Girl dolls, 2 or 3 expensive, nice dolls, to make enough money to make the same decisions that every rich person is already making and keeping the cheap toys away from their kids. They would love to be buying high quality stuff for their kids instead of 1,000 cheap things that are going to break immediately because that's what they can afford.
That's the worst defense of Donald Trump.
Sure, your kid can only have 1 toy instead of 3, but hey, it's a really nice toy. This is classic rich person logic. If something costs more, it must be better for you. What makes this whole thing extra ridiculous is the surrogate acted like he was doing working families a solid, like they should thank him for the brilliant insight that they've been buying toys all wrong. Don't you see? Your problem isn't that you can't afford things, it's that you're buying too many affordable things. Problem solved, America. The surrogate's suggestion about expensive dolls reveals exactly how disconnected GOP representatives are from regular Americans' wallets. These are people who think a $10 price increase is just skipping 1 coffee at Starbucks, not choosing between medicine and food for some families. It's the same mentality that had Marie Antoinette suggesting cake when people couldn't afford bread, except now it's let them buy American-made Barbies when families are struggling with inflation. The complete inability to understand that some families count every single dollar shows just how out of touch these representatives have become. And if you thought suggesting expensive dolls as a solution to inflation was bad, wait till you see how GOP representatives are actually celebrating economic pain as a form of patriotism. Because nothing says I love America like paying more for everything and being happy about it. You know you're in MAGA land when hurting financially becomes a badge of honor for loving America. Forget about the American dream of prosperity. The new patriotism is apparently paying more for stuff and smiling while your wallet bleeds. At least that's what Congresswoman Mary Miller wants you to believe. In what has to be one of the weirdest defenses of tariffs ever, Miller actually attacked American manufacturer John Deere while trying to support Trump's economic plans. She didn't just casually mention the company, she flat out threatened them. Hey, John Deere better get their business back to the country or they can plan on losing their business. Nothing says supporting American business like threatening American businesses, am I right? But Miller didn't stop there. The real kicker came when she basically suggested that if Americans aren't feeling economic pain from these tariffs, they're not true patriots. It's like she's the gym teacher of economics. No pain, no patriotic gain. The video shows her getting more and more excited as she explains how real Americans should just embrace suffering for the greater good. It's that special kind of twisted logic where paying more for groceries somehow makes you a better citizen. This pain equals patriotism argument completely flips the GOP's usual message. Remember when Republicans used to be the party of business and prosperity? Now they're basically saying, if you're not struggling, you're not American enough. It's like they took their entire economic playbook and just set it on fire for fun. What makes Miller's attack on John Deere extra bizarre is that the company employs thousands of workers in red states. You know, the very voters who put people like Miller in office. It's like she's playing economic Russian roulette with her own voters' job. Sure, you might lose your paycheck, but at least you'll feel patriotic while standing in the unemployment line. While Miller was busy praising economic suffering, she conveniently forgot to mention how these tariffs would hurt the very farmers who make up her base. Smithfield Foods, a major U.S. pork processor, has already reported that retaliatory tariffs from China have made it impossible to sell to them. Their CEO had to admit, with China no longer essentially being available, we've really had to pivot our business. But I guess those farm families should just be happy to struggle for America, right? The Congresswoman's defense came right after Trump doubled down on tariffs despite warnings from economists about inflation. The U.S. economy actually shrank 0.3% in the first quarter of 2025. The first negative reading since COVID. But don't worry about that pesky economic data stuff. Just trust that paying more for everything is somehow making America great again. The most mind-boggling part of all this is that GOP representatives like Miller are now openly celebrating economic hardship as patriotic. They've completely flipped their traditional message of prosperity. It used to be a chicken in every pot. Now it's an empty pot shows you love America. It's like they're trying to rebrand the Great Depression as a patriotic exercise program. But if you thought Miller's twisted tariff logic was bad, wait till you see how GOP representatives tried explaining Trump's position on due process. That's where where things really fell apart. Nothing says, we respect the Constitution, like watching a congressman try to explain why skipping trials and going straight to executions is actually totally fine. The mental gymnastics would win Olympic gold if defending the indefensible was a competitive sport. Remember when Republicans used to love the Constitution? They used to wave it around like a football trophy. Now they treat it more like that weird vegetable dish at Thanksgiving that nobody wants to touch. This change happened right around the time Trump started talking about the Constitution and showing he knows about as much about it as a goldfish knows about bicycle repair. GOP Representative Rich McCormick had the unfortunate job of defending Trump's weird comments about due process on live TV. This is like being asked to explain why your drunk uncle thinks the moon landing happened in his backyard. McCormick started off confident enough, claiming Trump never said he didn't want to uphold the Constitution, but then came the moment of truth. The host played Trump's actual words. When asked if he supported due process for everyone, Trump gave one of those answers that's about as clear as mud. He said, "I got great lawyers. I'm going to make sure that we agree with the Supreme Court ruling." That's like asking someone if they'll stop at red lights and they answer, "I have a great mechanic." The look on McCormick's face was priceless. He froze like a computer that's just been asked to run too many programs at once. You could almost see the error message popping up behind his eyes. After the brain reboot, he launched into an explanation that made about as much sense as putting ketchup on ice cream. McCormick went with the classic GOP defense. What Trump really meant was, this has become their go-to move whenever Trump says something that makes normal people choke on their coffee. It's like they're part of a book club where everyone's reading a different book, but they're all pretending it's the same one. Meanwhile, Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett wasn't having any of it. She straight up said Trump should try to cosplay as an actual president instead of cosplaying as the next pope. She suggested Trump might want to do a little bit of research to understand the oath he took to protect and defend the Constitution. Harsh, but when you're dealing with someone who mixes up the Constitution with the Declaration of Independence, maybe necessary. The host kept pushing McCormick to explain how Trump's words showed any support for due process. This is when McCormick's defense got more desperate than a teenager making up excuses for missing curfew. He suddenly started talking about border security instead. Classic move. When cornered about one topic, just start talking about a completely different one. Can't explain Trump's views on due process? Let's discuss the border. It's political dodgeball at its finest. The whole sad display revealed how the GOP has tossed away their constitutional principles faster than last week's leftovers. They used to be the party that wouldn't shut up about the founding fathers. Now they're twisting themselves into human pretzels to explain why skipping trials might actually be okay sometimes. It's like watching someone who claimed to be a vegetarian for 40 years suddenly trying to explain why they're eating a triple cheeseburger. The GOP's attempts to explain away Trump's comments show how far they've fallen. They've gone from constitutional defenders to constitutional pretenders. It's not just mental gymnastics. It's a full Olympic routine with flips, twists, and judges holding up 10 cards for creativity. And if you thought watching Republicans abandon due process was bad, wait till you hear about their plans for Alcatraz, because nothing says make America great again like bringing back a prison that closed 60 years ago for being too expensive and inhumane. It's the political equivalent of suggesting we bring back polio for nostalgia's sake. Nothing says make America great again like bringing back a prison that closed in 1963 for being too expensive and awful. It's like suggesting we bring back black and white TV because color is just too complicated. But that's exactly what several GOP representatives decided was a brilliant idea. Multiple Republican representatives, including Senators Mullen and Schmidt, jumped on Trump's bizarre suggestion to reopen Alcatraz as a prison with the enthusiasm of kids being offered free ice cream. Senator Mullen was practically giddy when he said, "We want Rikers, we want Alcatraz East Coast, West Coast, let's go." Because nothing solves America's problems like a 1990s style coast rivalry, but for prison. These weren't some random people on Twitter or crazy uncles at Thanksgiving dinner. These were actual elected officials with real power seriously discussing a plan that experts immediately labeled as completely bonkers and impossibly expensive. It's like watching your financial advisor suggest you invest your retirement savings in magic beans. The GOP senators somehow framed this Alcatraz fantasy as a genius solution to both crime and immigration, two completely different issues. That's like saying a hammer is the perfect tool for both brain surgery and baking cookies. Senator Schmidt couldn't contain his excitement, declaring, "Yeah, I think it's a smart idea. Alcatraz is a smart idea. I think it's brilliant." Outside the box, thinking he's an outside the box thinker. So outside the box, he's suggesting we use a box that was closed 60 years ago. When pressed about little details like logistics, costs, and the fact that reopening Alcatraz would violate about 1 million laws, the representatives had no actual plan beyond Trump said it, so we support it. Their policy position was basically the political equivalent of "because I said so." The absurdity of this prison island fantasy reached peak levels when one representative suggested Alcatraz would be a perfect deterrent because criminals would be scared of sharks. Because apparently criminals make their career choices based on marine life concerns. I was going to rob that bank, but have you seen the sharks in San Francisco Bay? No, thank you. Meanwhile, actual prison reform experts watched in horror as senators discussed this fantasy instead of evidence-based approaches. They probably felt like doctors watching someone suggest treating cancer with magic crystals and positive thinking. The whole Alcatraz discussion perfectly captured how GOP representatives will embrace any idea, no matter how ridiculous, if Trump mentions it. If tomorrow Trump suggested fighting inflation by making money out of cheese, these same senators would be on TV explaining why dairy-based currency is economic genius. This isn't just blind loyalty, it's a complete abandonment of independent thought. It's the political version of that friend who starts dating someone new and suddenly adopts all their opinions, hobbies, and even their weird food preferences. "I've always thought Alcatraz should reopen" is the political equivalent of "I've always loved skydiving" after dating someone once who mentioned they like heights. The Alcatraz plan would cost billions, violate countless laws, and accomplish absolutely nothing useful. Yet GOP representatives cheered for it on live TV like it was the greatest idea since sliced bread. They talked about it with the excitement of lottery winners, not people discussing a serious policy proposal that would affect real lives. In the end, the Alcatraz fantasy reveals exactly what happens when loyalty to a person becomes more important than loyalty to principles or reality itself. The GOP has gone from the party of fiscal responsibility to the party of "let's spend billions reopening a prison museum because Trump thought it sounded cool," and they wonder why people don't take them seriously anymore. We've seen it all, from telling poor families to buy expensive dolls to suggesting economic pain is patriotic. The GOP has completely lost the plot. They're so busy defending Trump they forgot how reality works. Opening Alcatraz, really? That's their big solution. The real victims here aren't the Republicans making fools of themselves on TV. It's us, regular Americans who deserve representatives with functioning brains. Next time you hear a GOP rep talking about patriotic suffering or prison islands, remember this isn't normal politics. This is what happens when a party decides winning matters more than making sense. Loyalty trumps reality every single time.